She came to map the mountain. She never expected to find the dragon who would map her heart. When cartographer Miren Ashford discovered the last golden dragon imprisoned in the Ashen Peaks, she faced an impossible truth. His freedom required her eternal captivity, but walking away might destroy them both. Subscribe now. This love will rewrite the laws of magic itself. Mist curled through ancient stone as massive golden eyes opened in the darkness, and a voice like thunder whispered her name. The villagers of Grey Hollow called her mad. Perhaps they were right. Miren Ashford stood at the base of the Ashen Peaks, her leather satchel heavy with cartography tools, her boots worn from 3 years of wandering the unmapped corners of the known world. Behind her, the last village before the wilderness had emptied its streets when she'd announced her destination. Only old Garrick, the innkeeper with milky eyes and gnarled hands, had remained to watch her leave. "The mountain takes what climbs it," he'd said, his voice crackling like dry leaves. "Dragons may be gone from most of the world, girl, but not from there. Never from there." Miren had smiled politely, the way she always did when locals shared their superstitions. In her experience, unmapped territories weren't guarded by monsters. They were simply forgotten, left blank on charts because cartographers feared the difficult journey or the harsh terrain. She'd made her career filling in those blank spaces, and the Ashen Peaks represented her masterwork's final missing piece. The morning sun struggled to penetrate the perpetual mist that shrouded the mountain range. Miren adjusted her compass, marked her starting coordinates in her field journal, and began to climb. The first hour proved easy enough. A neglected trail wound through alpine meadows where wildflowers bloomed in defiant bursts of purple and gold. Miren sketched as she walked, her charcoal pencil capturing the curve of the land, the angle of rock formations, the distance between landmarks. This was her meditation, her purpose, transforming the chaos of unexplored wilderness into ordered, beautiful maps that others could follow. By midday, the meadows gave way to rockier terrain. The trail vanished entirely, replaced by treacherous scree slopes and narrow ledges that hugged sheer cliff faces. Miren's hands found purchase on ancient stone, worn smooth by centuries of wind and weather. Her cartographer's eye noticed something odd, deliberate cuts in the rock face, too precise to be natural erosion. Handholds, perhaps, carved by travelers long ago, or by something else entirely. She paused at a natural alcove to rest and eat dried fruit from her pack. From this vantage point, she could see Grey Hollow far below, a cluster of gray roofs and smoking chimneys that looked like a child's toy village. The world felt distant up here, as if she'd climbed beyond the reach of ordinary human concerns. That's when she noticed the ruins. Partially hidden by mist and overgrowth, massive stone structures emerged from the mountainside. Not a village, too grand for that. These were fortress walls, watchtowers, archways carved with symbols that predated any language Miren recognized. She approached slowly, her heart racing with the thrill of discovery. The symbols covered every surface. Miren traced them with careful fingers, wishing she'd studied more ancient linguistics. They seemed to tell a story in pictographs. Winged creatures, humanoid figures, flames, and what might have been stars, or perhaps magic itself rendered in stone. One image repeated throughout, a dragon with golden scales, wings spread in protection over smaller figures below. Guardians, not monsters. The realization struck her like lightning. The dragons protected this place, she whispered to the empty air. They weren't the enemy. They were... The mountain answered with a roar. Not the roar of wind or thunder, but something deeper, more primal. The stone beneath Miren's feet vibrated. Dust rained from ancient archways. She stumbled backward, her satchel swinging wildly, as cracks spider-webbed across the ruins. Earthquake. Her mind supplied the rational explanation, even as her instincts screamed, "Run!" She ran. The path she'd climbed crumbled behind her like a collapsing dream. Miren leaped over widening fissures, her breath ragged in her throat. her hands scraping against rock as she tried to find stable ground. The entire mountainside seemed to be coming apart, centuries of stillness ending in catastrophic motion. A section of cliff face gave way completely. Miren felt the sickening sensation of falling, her stomach lurching, her vision filled with tumbling stone and swirling mist. She hit something hard, ice or rock, she couldn't tell, and slid downward into darkness. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Pain exploded through her left leg, sharp and immediate. She tried to scream but managed only a choked gasp as she continued sliding, rolling, falling through what felt like miles of mountain interior. Then, stillness. Miren lay in absolute darkness, every breath a struggle, her leg throbbing with a heat that suggested broken bones or worse. Slowly, her eyes adjusted to reveal she'd fallen into a massive cavern, so vast that her limited vision couldn't find its boundaries. Faint phosphorescent lichen clung to distant walls, providing just enough light to see shapes in the darkness. Shapes that didn't belong in any natural cave. Pillars of carved stone rose like petrified trees. Crystalline formations jutted from the floor and ceiling, but they'd been deliberately arranged, not randomly grown. And everywhere, gold. Not nuggets or veins in the rock, but treasure. Mountains of it. Coins from kingdoms that no longer existed, crowns that had rested on forgotten heads, goblets and plates and jewelry that represented the wealth of empires. All of it covered in centuries of dust, creating drifts of tarnished splendor that caught the lichen light and threw it back in muted glimmers. Miren's cartographer mind tried to process the impossibility. This wasn't a cave. This was a horde. A dragon's horde. "No," she whispered, and her voice echoed back 100 times. "No, no, no." She tried to stand. Her leg buckled immediately, sending fresh waves of agony through her body. Broken. Definitely broken. She collapsed against a pile of ancient coins, their metallic smell mixing with the cavern's mineral dampness and something else, something like smoke and spices and heat held in stone for too long. That's when she heard the breathing, not her own ragged gasps, but something slower, deeper, rhythmic. The breathing of something massive, something that had been sleeping and now, perhaps, was waking. Miren's hand found her belt knife, a pathetic defense, but the only one she had. She turned toward the sound, her back pressed against cold gold, her eyes straining in the dim light. 2 points of brightness appeared in the darkness, not lichen glow. These were focused, intelligent, burning with their own inner fire. Eyes, golden eyes, each one larger than Miren's head, set in a massive skull that emerged from the shadows like a nightmare taking shape. Scales the color of dawn caught what little light existed and threw it back amplified. A snout longer than Miren was tall, teeth like ivory swords. Wings, dear gods, wings that seemed to fill half the cavern, membranous and powerful and ancient beyond measure. The dragon of the Ashen Peaks was real, and Miren Ashford had just crashed directly into its lair. The creature moved forward with a grace that defied its size, muscles rippling beneath golden scales that seemed to generate their own heat. Steam rose from its nostrils with each breath. The air itself trembled with the power of its presence. Miren couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare as death incarnate loomed over her, beautiful and terrible and impossibly real. The dragon's eyes narrowed. Its massive head lowered until those golden eyes were level with Miren's face, so close she could feel the heat radiating from scales that had weathered centuries. Then it spoke, not in roars or growls, but in a voice like distant thunder shaped into words, each syllable carrying the weight of ages. "You should not have come here, little mapmaker." Miren's world tilted. Dragons were real. Dragons were real, and they could speak, and one was addressing her with knowledge it shouldn't possess, and her broken leg hurt so much she might faint, And how? She managed through chattering teeth. How do you know what I am? The dragon's expression shifted. Could dragons smile? This one seemed to, though the effect was more unsettling than comforting. I know many things, it said, smoke curling from its nostrils with each word. I have had 1,000 years to learn them, trapped in this mountain, watching the world through cracks in stone. I know you are Miren Ashford of the Cartographers Guild. I know you have spent 3 years mapping the forgotten corners of the 7 kingdoms. I know you came here seeking to complete your masterwork. Its head tilted, studying her with those burning eyes. And I know, it continued, its voice dropping to something almost gentle, that you are dying. Miren looked down at her leg. In the golden glow emanating from the dragon's scales, she could see the unnatural angle of the break, the blood seeping through her trousers, the pale color of her skin as shock began to set in. Yes, she whispered. I suppose I am. The dragon was silent for a long moment. Then, with a sound like boulders grinding together, it began to move, but not to attack, to transform. The massive form shimmered like a mirage in desert heat. Scales became skin. Wings folded into nothingness. The enormous bulk condensed, compressed, reformed into something human-sized and human-shaped, though nothing about it seemed truly human. Where the dragon had been stood a man, or something wearing a man's shape, at least. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with hair the color of molten gold and eyes that still burned with inner fire. His skin held a faint luminescence, and when he moved toward Miren, she could see that he was barefoot, bare-chested, wearing only simple trousers that looked woven from some material that shimmered like captured starlight. But it was his face that held her attention. Ancient and young at once, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with human standards and everything to do with the terrible perfection of natural forces, avalanches and lightning and wildfire given form. "Let me help you," he said, and his voice was still thunder, but gentler now, shaped for human ears. "You will die if I do not." Miren's vision blurred at the edges. Blood loss and shock were making the world distant, dreamlike. "Why would you help me? I invaded your home. Aren't dragons supposed to kill trespassers?" The man who was a dragon knelt beside her, and Miren felt heat radiating from him like standing near a forge. "Once, perhaps," he said softly. "But I have been alone for so long, Miren Ashford. So very, terribly long. And you." He reached out, his hand hovering over her broken leg, and she felt warmth flowing from his palm, sinking into damaged tissue, easing pain she'd thought would kill her. "You are the first person to reach this deep into my prison in 300 years. The first to speak to me in longer still. I will not let you die. Not yet." The pain in her leg faded to a dull ache. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. Miren's vision cleared enough to see the concentration on his face, the way his eyes blazed brighter as he worked whatever magic dragons possessed. "What's your name?" she heard herself ask, her voice dreamlike and distant. He looked up, meeting her eyes, and for just a moment she saw something in his expression that shocked her more than anything else that had happened. Loneliness so profound it made her chest ache. "Aurelius," he said. "Aurelius Emberclaw, last of the golden dragons, guardian of the Ashen Peaks." His mouth twisted into something bitter, and prisoner of this mountain for 1,000 years. Miren's consciousness wavered, hovering on the edge of darkness. The last thing she saw before exhaustion claimed her was Aurelius lifting her gently in arms that radiated impossible warmth, carrying her deeper into his golden prison while speaking words she almost couldn't hear. "Welcome to my cage, little mapmaker. I pray you find a way to leave it, unlike me." Then darkness took her, and Miren Ashford's life changed forever. Miren woke to warmth and the scent of smoke-tinged honey. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to soft golden light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. She lay on something softer than it had any right to be, a bed of furs and woven fabrics that felt ancient, yet perfectly preserved, piled atop what appeared to be a natural stone shelf carved into the cavern wall. Her leg. She remembered the fall, the break, the sickening angle of shattered bone. Miren pushed herself upright carefully, expecting agony, and found instead only a deep ache, the kind that follows injury already days into healing. She pulled back the fur covering her leg and gasped. Where broken bone had jutted against skin, she now found only a thin silver scar, already fading. The flesh was whole, warm, functional. She flexed her ankle experimentally, tender, but not painful. Impossible. Even the best healers in the 7 kingdoms needed weeks to mend breaks like that, and they always left worse scars. Dragonfire accelerates healing, a voice said from the shadows. Though it cannot prevent all marks, you'll carry that scar, I'm afraid. A reminder of the day you fell into legend. Aurelius stepped into the light, and Miren's breath caught despite herself. In his human form, he moved with liquid grace, every gesture suggesting the predator hidden beneath beautiful skin. He carried a tray carved from a single piece of crystal. On it, bread that steamed despite no visible source of heat, dried fruits that looked impossibly fresh, and a goblet of water so clear it seemed to glow. "You've been unconscious for 2 days," he said, setting the tray beside her. "Your body needed time to accept the healing. Dragon magic and human flesh don't always cooperate smoothly." 2 days. Miren's mind raced. The villagers would think her dead by now. Her supplies were somewhere in the rubble of her fall. Her maps, her instruments, her life's work. "Your satchel survived," Aurelius said, as if reading her thoughts. He gestured to the corner where her leather bag sat, looking battered but intact. "I retrieved what I could from the avalanche debris. Your precious maps are safe." Miren stared at him. Why? Why what? Why save me? Why heal me? Why bring me here and feed me and care about my maps? She pushed herself fully upright, ignoring the protest from her healing leg. Dragons in the old stories destroy. They hoard and burn and terrorize. They don't. She gestured helplessly at the tray, the bed, the care he'd clearly taken. They don't do this. Aurelius's expression flickered. Something like pain crossed his ageless features. He turned away, walking to the edge of the chamber where the golden light faded into darkness. "The old stories are written by the victors," he said quietly, "by dragon slayers and kings who wanted our gold. They never mention that dragons were guardians, that we protected the mountain passes and the kingdoms below. They never speak of the treaties, the centuries of peace, the way humans and dragons once lived in balance." He turned back to face her, and in the golden glow, Miren could see his eyes blazing with old anger and older grief. They definitely never mentioned the betrayal. Miren's cartographer mind, trained to piece together patterns from fragments, began connecting pieces. The ruins outside with their protective imagery, the symbols showing dragons and humans together, the perfect preservation of this cavern despite apparent centuries of abandonment. "The curse," she whispered. "You said you were a prisoner. Someone bound you here." "Not someone." Aurelius's voice hardened. "An entire order, the Crimson Brotherhood, dragon slayers who decided that our gold was worth more than our alliance. They came during the eclipse of shadows, when dragon magic runs weakest. 50 warriors, 3 mages, 1 betrayer who had been our friend." He moved closer, his heat washing over Miren like standing too near a fire. "They couldn't kill me. Golden dragons are nearly impossible to slay, our scales too strong, our fire too hot. So they did something worse. They bound me to this mountain with blood magic and iron chains forged in dragon's bane. A curse that would hold for 1,000 years or until..." He stopped abruptly, his jaw clenching. "Until what?" Miren prompted. Aurelius met her eyes, and she saw something in his expression that made her heart skip. Fear, hope, desperation all twisted together, until a mortal willingly takes my place. The words fell between them like stones into still water. Miren's mouth went dry. "What does that mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like." Aurelius's voice was carefully neutral now, as if discussing the weather rather than eternal imprisonment. "The curse requires a conscious choice. A human must agree, of their own free will, to remain in this mountain forever, becoming its new guardian, its new prisoner. Only then can I leave." He laughed, but the sound held no humor. The Brotherhood thought themselves clever. What human would ever choose eternal captivity? They assumed I'd remain here until the magic faded naturally. 1,000 years. Long enough that the world would forget dragons ever existed. Long enough that I'd watch everyone I'd ever known turn to dust while I remained frozen in time, unable to even die. Miren felt cold despite the warmth radiating from him. Have others come? In 1,000 years. A few, treasure hunters mostly, drawn by legends of dragon gold. They died in the outer passages. The mountain itself rejects those who come with greed in their hearts. You're the first to reach the inner sanctum in 3 centuries. His expression softened slightly. The first to arrive seeking knowledge rather than wealth. Perhaps that's why the mountain let you through. And when they reach here, the others who made it this far, I told them the truth. I've always told the truth. Dragons cannot lie. It's a fundamental part of our nature. Some ran screaming. Some tried to bargain, to find loopholes in the curse. One man actually considered it. An old scholar who'd lost everything and thought eternal life in a mountain might not be so terrible. Aurelius's voice dropped. But I sent him away. I couldn't let someone sacrifice their entire existence for my freedom. Not even after centuries of isolation. Miren absorbed this, her mind working through implications. So you've been alone. Completely alone. For 1,000 years. Not completely. The mountain sometimes lets me see the outside world through cracks and fissures. I can feel the sun on certain days, hear wind and rain, watch clouds drift past my prison walls. I've learned languages by listening to travelers in the valleys below. I've heard the rise and fall of kingdoms, the march of history, the changing of ages. He sat on the stone floor across from her, suddenly looking unutterably weary. I know more about your world than most humans, but I haven't touched grass in a millennium, haven't felt rain on my scales, haven't flown through open sky or hunted or lived as dragons were meant to live. The loneliness in his voice was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. Miren found herself asking, "Why not let me die? If you're that desperate for freedom, why heal me? Give me a chance to leave. You could have let me succumb to my injuries, and no one would ever know." Aurelius looked at her for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable. "Because I stopped being that desperate 300 years ago," he said softly. "I'd rather remain here forever than purchase my freedom with someone's death or unwilling servitude. That would make me the monster the stories claim I am. And He paused, seeming to struggle with words. "I refuse to become what they said we were." Silence fell between them, broken only by the distant drip of water somewhere in the cavern depths. Miren reached for the goblet on the tray, suddenly desperately thirsty. The water tasted of minerals and something sweet she couldn't identify. Mountain snow, perhaps, filtered through ancient stone. "How long do I have?" she asked. "Before my leg is healed enough to climb." "A week, perhaps 2. The outer passages are treacherous even for the uninjured. I'll guide you to the safest route when you're ready." His expression was carefully neutral. "You're free to go whenever you wish. That's always been true. The curse binds me, not my guests." "Guests," Miren repeated, almost laughing. "Is that what I am? What else would you be?" but something in his tone suggested the question wasn't rhetorical. Miren looked around the chamber, really seeing it for the first time. The care taken in arranging the space, books stacked in careful piles, their spines showing titles in a dozen languages, star charts hung on walls, tracking celestial movements across centuries. A workshop area held tools for crafts she couldn't identify. This wasn't just a prison. It was a life. 1,000 years of existence compressed into stone and gold and desperate attempts to stay sane. "Tell me about the dragons," she said impulsively. "Not the curse, not the imprisonment. Tell me what it was like before, when you were free." Aurelius blinked, clearly surprised. "Why? Because I'm a cartographer. I map the unknown. And dragons, real dragons, not the monsters from stories. That's territory no one's charted in a millennium. Because," she hesitated, then pushed forward, "because you saved my life, and I'd like to know the person who did that. Not just the prisoner or the legend. You." Something shifted in Aurelius's expression. Walls coming down, ice cracking after a long winter. "We flew in formations," he began quietly. "Golden dragons in the dawn, silver at midday, copper in the evening. The sky belonged to us, but we shared it willingly. We'd race the wind currents over the mountain peaks, diving through clouds, testing our speed against each other." As he spoke, his voice took on a quality Miren had never heard, joy, pure and uncomplicated. He told her about dragon culture, their love of music and mathematics, the way they'd collected not just gold, but knowledge, beauty, anything that caught their ancient fancy. He described flight with such visceral detail that Miren could almost feel the wind beneath wings she didn't have, the freedom of the open sky. He told her about his family, a mother who'd taught him to shape fire into sculptures, a younger sister who'd specialized in healing magic, an old grandfather who'd remembered when humans first learned to forge iron. All gone now, dead in the wars that had preceded the betrayal, or scattered to lands so far away they might as well be myths themselves. "I don't know if any golden dragons remain," he said, his voice heavy. "I can't sense them. The curse blocks my connection to dragonkind. I could be the last, or there could be hundreds. I simply don't know." Miren listened, and as she listened, she sketched. Her hands found her charcoal and journal automatically, and she began drawing not maps but images, his dragon form as he'd described it in flight, the way his scales caught sunlight, the formations of dragons dancing in ancient skies. Aurelius watched her work, his expression softening. "You actually believe me?" he said wonderingly. "You're not humoring a mad creature or playing along out of fear. You genuinely believe what I'm telling you." Miren looked up from her sketch. "You said dragons can't lie. Should I assume that extends only to curse terms and not conversation?" "No, we genuinely cannot speak falsehoods. Something in our nature prevents it. We can remain silent. We can phrase truths carefully, but we cannot produce words we know to be untrue." "Then why wouldn't I believe you?" Miren returned to her drawing. "Besides, I fell into a dragon's lair, and he healed me instead of eating me. I'm reasonably certain my understanding of reality needed updating anyway." Aurelius laughed, really laughed this time, the sound echoing through the cavern like music. They talked through the day and into what Miren assumed was night, though time felt meaningless in the eternal golden glow of the cavern. Aurelius showed her his collections, not just gold and jewels, but books saved from burning libraries, instruments from forgotten orchestras, seeds from plants that no longer grew in the outside world, carefully preserved in crystal cases. "I thought if I ever got free," he explained, "I could replant them, restore what was lost, give something back to the world beyond just dragonfire and old stories." Miren touched one of the crystal cases gently, marveling at the tiny seeds within. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "Hopeful." "Hope is all I've had," Aurelius said quietly. It's a dangerous thing to maintain for 1,000 years, but the alternative is despair, and that way lies true madness. As her second conscious day in the mountain wore on, Miren found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't expected. Aurelius was easy to talk to, his 1,000 years of observation making him surprisingly insightful about human nature. He asked about her work, her travels, her reasons for becoming a cartographer. "I wanted to make the world knowable," she told him, "to take mystery and transform it into information that helps people. So they're never lost, so they can find their way home. And yet you chose to map the most dangerous, remote places," Aurelius observed. "The places people are most likely to get lost." "Well," Miren smiled, "someone has to chart the dangerous routes. Otherwise, how would anyone know which paths to avoid, or which paths to take?" Aurelius added softly, "if they're brave enough to try." Their eyes met, and Miren felt something shift in the air between them, a connection forming, delicate as spider silk but no less real for its fragility. She should be afraid. This was a dragon, a creature of legend, capable of incinerating her with a breath. But when she looked at Aurelius, all she saw was a person who'd endured 1,000 years of isolation, with grace and gentleness intact. Someone who'd chosen kindness over bitterness, hope over despair. Someone who made her chest ache with empathy. "The outer world has changed since your imprisonment," she said, breaking the moment. "Would you like me to tell you about it? The new kingdoms, the technologies, the way map-making has evolved." Aurelius's expression brightened. "I would like that very much." So Miren talked, sharing her knowledge of the modern world, and Aurelius listened with the intensity of someone drinking in rain after a drought. They fell into an easy rhythm, her stories answered by his questions, his ancient knowledge balanced by her contemporary experience. Neither mentioned the curse again that day. Neither spoke of freedom or sacrifice or impossible choices. But as Miren drifted to sleep that night, warm beneath ancient firs in a dragon's lair, she found herself thinking dangerous thoughts. Thinking that maybe, just maybe, a week or two wouldn't be nearly enough time to learn everything she wanted to know about Aurelius Emberclaw. Thinking that leaving might be harder than she'd imagined. Thinking that somewhere in the space between their words, something was beginning to grow. Something that had no place in the tragedy of a 1,000-year curse. Something that felt dangerously like connection. By her 5th day in the mountain, Miren's leg had healed enough to walk without limping. She'd expected to feel trapped in the cavern, desperate to escape back to sunlight and open air. Instead, she found herself exploring deeper into Aurelius's domain, discovering chambers that branched off from the main hoard like chapters in an endless book. One room held nothing but musical instruments, harps with strings that hummed when wind moved through distant fissures, drums carved from single pieces of stone, flutes made from dragon bone that Aurelius explained were gifts from dragons who'd passed, their remains transformed into instruments that could play notes no human-made object could match. Another chamber served as a library, books stacked floor to ceiling in careful organization. Aurelius had salvaged them from wars and floods and fires, preserving knowledge that would have otherwise vanished. Miren ran her fingers along spines bearing titles in languages she recognized and dozens she didn't. "I taught myself to read," Aurelius told her, watching from the doorway as she marveled at the collection. "It took decades to master each language without a teacher, but I had nothing but time. The mountain sometimes echoes with voices from the valleys below. I'd listen to merchants and scholars, piecing together meaning from context." "That's extraordinary," Miren breathed. "You've created an entire university in stone, a university with only one student." His smile was bittersweet. Knowledge without someone to share it with is just elaborate loneliness, but he was sharing it now, with her. And Miren drank it in like someone dying of thirst. On the 6th day, Aurelius asked if she wanted to see his true form again. They stood in the largest chamber, the central hoard where golden treasures rose in glittering drifts. Miren's heart hammered in her chest, half excitement and half primal fear. She'd seen his dragon form only once, and she'd been delirious with pain and shock. Now, conscious and aware, the prospect felt simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. "You don't have to," Aurelius said, misreading her hesitation. "I know it can be overwhelming, frightening even. The form is designed for battle and flight, not for putting humans at ease." "I'm not frightened," Miren said, and was surprised to realize it was mostly true. "I want to see the real you, not just the shape you wear for my comfort." Something flashed in Aurelius's eyes, gratitude, perhaps, or relief. "Step back then," he said softly. "The transformation requires space." Miren retreated to the chamber's edge, pressing her back against cool stone. Aurelius walked to the center of the hoard, his human form small and almost fragile looking against the mountains of gold. Then he began to change. It wasn't a violent transformation. There was no tearing of flesh, no screams of pain. Instead, Aurelius seemed to unfold, like a flower blooming in reverse, his human shape expanding and shifting with fluid grace. Light poured from his skin, golden and warm, filling the cavern with radiance that made the treasure seem dull by comparison. His body elongated, stretched, grew. Arms became forelegs, hands shifting into massive clawed feet that scattered coins like water. His spine extended into a tail that could crush stone, powerful and serpentine. Wings erupted from his shoulders, not violently, but like sails unfurling, membranes stretched between bones that sang with ancient strength. His face transformed last, human features flowing into a dragon's magnificent head. Horns curved back from his skull like a crown. His jaw lengthened, revealing teeth that gleamed white as winter ice. And his eyes, those golden eyes remained unchanged, burning with the same intelligence and warmth she'd come to recognize in his human form. When the transformation completed, Aurelius towered before her, a creature of myth made flesh and scale and impossible beauty. He was massive. His head alone was larger than a wagon. His wings, when fully extended, would have spanned the entire chamber had he opened them completely. Scales covered every inch of him, each one the size of Miren's palm, layered in perfect geometric patterns that caught the light and threw it back in dancing reflections. They were gold, true gold, not yellow or brass, but the deep, warm gold of sunset on honey. Steam rose from his nostrils with each breath. Heat radiated from him in waves, turning the air itself into a shimmering curtain. When he moved, his claws rang against stone like bells, and his tail sent treasures sliding in cascades of metallic music. Miren couldn't breathe. Not from fear, from awe. She'd seen mountains and oceans, mapped territories that stretched beyond horizons. She'd witnessed sunrises from clifftops and storms that shook the earth. But nothing in her travels had prepared her for this. For the terrible, magnificent reality of a dragon in his true glory. Aurelius lowered his enormous head, bringing his eyes level with Miren. She could see her reflection in those molten pools, could feel the heat of his breath washing over her like standing before an open forge. "You're beautiful," she whispered. The dragon's eyes widened fractionally, surprise, clear even in that alien face. "Humans don't usually think so," Aurelius rumbled, his voice in this form like an avalanche-given speech, each word resonating in Miren's chest. "They see claws and teeth and fire. They see a monster." Miren stepped forward, her fear evaporating in the face of wonder. She moved closer until she stood directly before him, her head barely reaching his lowest jaw. "Then they're not really looking," she said, slowly, giving him every chance to pull away. Miren reached out and placed her palm against his scaled chest. The contact sent a shock through her entire body, not painful, but electric. His scales were smooth and impossibly warm, each one fitting perfectly against its neighbors like a master craftsman's work. Beneath her hand, She could feel his heartbeat, slow and powerful, each pulse sending warmth radiating outward. Aurelius went completely still, as if her touch had frozen him in place. "No one has touched my true form and kindness since before the curse," he said quietly. His massive voice gentled. "They've struck me with weapons, tried to pierce my scales for trophies. But this simple contact without fear or violence, I'd forgotten what it felt like." Miren's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. She moved her hand slowly, exploring the texture of his scales, the way they overlapped and interlocked. Up close, she could see they weren't uniformly gold. Subtle variations created patterns like tiger stripes, darker burnished bronze flowing into lighter amber tones. "You're not a monster," she said firmly. "You're magnificent, a marvel. The old stories are idiots if they can't see that." Aurelius made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something closer to a sob. "Careful, little mapmaker. You're beginning to sound dangerously kind." "Is that dangerous?" "To me, yes." His eyes held hers, and Miren saw vulnerability there that stole her breath. "I've survived 1,000 years of isolation by not hoping for things I can't have. Kindness makes me hope, and hope, after this long, is a cruelty all its own." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Miren should step back, should remember that this was temporary, that she had a life waiting outside this mountain, that getting attached to a cursed dragon was the definition of foolishness. Instead, she asked, "Can you show me your fire?" Aurelius tilted his head, the gesture curiously dog-like despite his massive size. "My fire, dragon fire. You've mentioned it, used it for healing, but I've never seen it, not truly." She smiled up at him. "Call it cartographer's curiosity. I want to map all of you, including the parts that burn." For a long moment, Aurelius simply stared at her. Then he pulled his head back, his neck arching, his chest expanding with an indrawn breath that seemed to pull air from every corner of the chamber. "Stand behind me," he commanded, his voice urgent. "Dragonfire is not something to face directly." Miren circled around to his flank, placing herself near his shoulder where she could still see but wouldn't be in the path of whatever came next. Aurelius exhaled. Fire poured from his jaws, but not the red-orange flames of normal burning. This was gold incarnate, liquid sunlight given form and fury. It roared forth in a column that lit the entire cavern like noon, so bright Miren had to shield her eyes. The heat was intense but strangely controlled, radiating warmth without scorching. The fire struck the far wall and didn't char or blacken. Instead, it seemed to sink into the stone, leaving behind a faint luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. When the flames cut off, Aurelius turned his head to look at her, smoke curling from his nostrils. "Dragon fire doesn't destroy," he explained, his voice rough from the exertion. "Not golden dragon fire, at least. We were the healers, the builders. Our flames transform rather than consume. They can mend wounds, purify water, even in the old days, help crops grow and metals take perfect shape in forges." "It's beautiful," Miren said, still staring at the glowing wall. "Like weaponized sunrise. Weaponized sunrise." Aurelius's laugh rumbled through the chamber. "I'm stealing that description." They spent hours like that, Aurelius in his true form, Miren exploring every aspect of him with a cartographer's attention to detail. She sketched his proportions, the architecture of his wings, the patterns in his scales. She asked 1,000 questions, and he answered each one with patience that spoke of desperate hunger for connection. When she asked if he could fly in the confines of the mountain, his expression turned wistful. "Not truly. I can glide from ledge to ledge in some of the larger caverns, spread my wings enough to remember what it feels like. But flight, real flight, requires open sky and wind currents and space to build speed. I haven't flown in." He paused, calculating. 947 years, 3 months, approximately 12 days. The precision of that answer broke Miren's heart. "You've been counting," she said softly. "Every single day." His voice was barely a whisper despite its depth. "At first, I thought the curse might break early, that someone would find a loophole or the magic would fail. I counted days as a countdown. Then it became something else. A way to mark time, to prove I still existed, that the years weren't just blurring into meaningless eternity." Miren moved without thinking, pressing her entire body against his scaled foreleg in something that might have been an embrace if either of them had been human-sized. "You exist," she said fiercely. "You matter. Curse or no curse, prison or no prison, you exist and you matter. Aurelius Emberclaw." The dragon shuddered, his entire massive frame trembling. Then, carefully, so carefully, as if she were made of spun glass, he curled his neck around, bringing his head down to shelter her against his chest. His wing extended, creating a canopy of membrane and bone that enclosed them both in a space that felt suddenly intimate despite the size difference. "Thank you," he rumbled, and Miren felt the words vibrate through his scales into her bones. "I needed to hear that. Perhaps more than I knew." They stayed like that for a timeless moment. Woman and dragon wrapped together in warmth and unexpected tenderness. When Aurelius finally transformed back to human form, it was because Miren's stomach growled loud enough to echo. He materialized laughing, his human body emerging from the golden light with that same fluid grace. But something had changed. The distance he'd maintained before, the careful walls, had crumbled. He stood closer now, his arm brushing hers as they walked back to the main chamber where food waited. "Your leg is nearly healed," he observed over their meal. Fresh bread he'd somehow baked in dragon fire, fruit preserved through magic, cheese that tasted of mountain herbs. "Another day or two, and you could make the climb safely." Miren's hand stilled halfway to her mouth. "Oh, yes, I suppose I could." Silence fell between them, weighted and uncomfortable. "Do you want to leave?" Aurelius asked carefully, not meeting her eyes. Did she? Miren examined the question honestly. Outside these walls waited her unfinished map, her reputation in the cartographer's guild, the life she'd built over years of careful work. Staying served no practical purpose. She'd learned what she could of this place, gathered more than enough material for additions to her charts. But the thought of climbing out of this mountain, of leaving Aurelius to another 1,000 years alone, made her chest feel hollow. "I don't know," she admitted. "I should want to. I have work waiting, obligations. My masterwork is unfinished. But, he prompted gently. "But I keep thinking that there's more to map here, more to learn." She met his eyes. "More time I'd like to spend understanding you." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something Miren couldn't quite name. Aurelius reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were warm, his touch feather light. "You're playing with fire, Miren Ashford," he said softly, "the kind that doesn't burn flesh but might consume you nonetheless." "Maybe I want to be consumed," she whispered back. His eyes blazed brighter, molten gold swirling with emotions too complex to name. "Don't say things like that. Not when I'm holding on to control by threads. Not when every moment with you makes this prison feel less like a cage and more like a home. Not when I'm starting to dread the day you leave more than I've dreaded anything in 1,000 years. Miren's heart hammered against her ribs. Aurelius. He closed the distance between them, his forehead resting against hers, his breath warm on her face. "You should go," he said, his voice ragged, "while you still can, while this is still just friendship, curiosity, before it becomes something we can't take back. What if I don't want to take it back? Miren asked. What if I want to know what comes next? Heartbreak comes next, Aurelius said, but he didn't pull away. Pain, impossible choices. I'm cursed, Miren. Bound to this mountain until someone sacrifices their entire existence for mine, or until time itself runs down. There's no future here except tragedy. Maybe, Miren agreed, or maybe there's something neither of us has considered yet. A third option. A way forward we haven't found because we've been too afraid to look. She pulled back just enough to see his face clearly. I'm not promising to stay forever, she said honestly. I'm not promising anything except this. I'm not leaving tomorrow, or the day after. I'm staying until we've explored every possibility, until we've turned over every stone looking for answers. Because you deserve that, Aurelius. You deserve someone who'll try. His expression crumbled. Centuries of loneliness cracking open to reveal raw, desperate hope. You're either very brave or very foolish, he whispered. I'm a cartographer who fell into a dragon's lair, Miren said, smiling despite the tears she felt building. I've always been both. Then, because words felt insufficient, and because the space between them had become unbearable, Miren did something reckless. She kissed him. It was gentle, barely more than a brush of lips, but the contact sent fire racing through her veins. Aurelius froze for a heartbeat, then kissed her back with a tenderness that seemed impossible from a creature who could level mountains. His hands cupped her face carefully, as if she might shatter. His mouth moved against hers with reverent slowness, tasting of smoke and honey and something indefinably ancient. Heat radiated from him, wrapping her in warmth that had nothing to do with dragon fire and everything to do with the desperate longing of someone who'd been untouched for a millennium. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Aurelius's eyes had turned molten, glowing bright enough to cast shadows. Miren, he breathed, her name sounding like a prayer. What are we doing? I have absolutely no idea, she admitted, her hands still resting on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. But I want to find out. He pulled her close, tucking her against him, his chin resting on top of her head. This is madness, he murmured into her hair. Probably, Miren agreed. It can't end well. Maybe not. We should stop. Be sensible. Protect ourselves. We definitely should. Neither of them moved to pull away. Outside the mountain, night was falling. Miren could sense it in the subtle shift of air pressure through the stone. But here, wrapped in a dragon's arms, surrounded by golden light and impossible warmth, she felt safer than she had in years. More dangerously, she felt home. And as Aurelius pressed a kiss to her temple, his warmth seeping into her bones, Miren realized that leaving was going to be infinitely harder than falling had ever been, if she could leave at all. The hunters arrived on Miren's 10th day in the mountain. She woke to the sound of distant thunder, except it wasn't thunder. It was the mountain itself trembling, stone grinding against stone as something disturbed the outer passages. Beside her, Aurelius sat bolt upright, his human form already beginning to shimmer with barely contained dragon essence. Someone's breached the outer wards, he said, his voice tight with tension she'd never heard before. Multiple someones. Armed. Miren's blood ran cold. How can you tell? The mountain speaks to me. It's part of the curse's binding. I feel every footstep in the passages, every disturbance in the stone. There are... He paused, concentrating. 6 of them, heavily armored, carrying weapons forged with dragon's bane. I can taste the iron poison in the air from here. Dragon hunters. Miren was already moving, pulling on her boots, checking her satchel out of pure instinct, even though her cartography tools would be useless against armed warriors. Why now? How did they even know to come? Aurelius's expression turned grim. You. What? The villagers in Grey Hollow know you climbed into the Ashen Peaks. When you didn't return, they likely assumed you dead and spread word that the mountain had claimed another victim. Dragon hunters track such stories. They know legends often have truth at their core. His jaw clenched. They've come for my heart. Miren felt sick. Your heart. Golden dragon hearts are the rarest alchemical ingredient in existence. Ground into powder and consumed, they grant extended life, not immortality, but centuries added to a human lifespan. On the black market, mine would be worth more than all the gold in this mountain combined. He stood, moving toward the chamber's entrance. They'll have to kill me to take it. And they'll try. Can they? Miren grabbed his arm. Kill you? I mean, you said golden dragons were nearly impossible to slay. Nearly. Aurelius covered her hand with his, the gesture achingly gentle despite the violence approaching. With enough dragon's bane weaponry and proper tactics, it can be done. The Brotherhood managed to curse me. They had the knowledge. These hunters will too, if they've come this far. This prepared. The mountain shuddered again, closer now. Miren could hear echoes of voices, harsh and commanding, bouncing through the stone corridors. You need to hide, Aurelius said urgently. There's a passage behind the library that leads to an upper chamber. They won't find you there. I'm not hiding while you fight alone. Miren, I won't watch you die without trying to help. Her voice was fierce, surprising even herself. Tell me what to do. How can I help? Aurelius stared at her for a long moment, conflict warring in his golden eyes. Then something shifted in his expression, determination settling over features that suddenly looked every one of his 1,000 years. Stay behind me, he commanded, no matter what happens. And if I tell you to run, you run. Promise me. Aurelius, promise me. Miren, please. The raw fear in his voice decided her. I promise. He pulled her close, kissing her hard and desperate, as if trying to memorize the taste of her mouth. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. I won't let them take you, he said fiercely. Whatever happens, I'll keep you safe. Then he transformed. The shift was faster than before, urgent rather than graceful. Golden light exploded through the chamber as Aurelius's human form gave way to his true nature. Within seconds, he towered over Miren in full dragon glory, scales gleaming like armor, wings spread in a display of dominance and threat. The hunters emerged from the passage entrance moments later. There were 6, as Aurelius had said, 4 men and 2 women, all wearing segmented armor that looked designed for mobility rather than heavy protection. Their weapons gleamed with a sickly green tinge that Miren recognized from Aurelius's description. Dragon's bane, metal alloyed with poisons specifically harmful to dragon kind. The leader, a scarred man with gray, threading his dark hair, stopped at the threshold. His eyes widened at the sight of Aurelius in full dragon form, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he smiled. The golden one. He breathed, something like reverence in his voice. The legends are true. You're even more magnificent than the old texts claimed. Leave, Aurelius rumbled, his voice shaking stone and rattling the treasure piles. Leave now and I'll let you depart with your lives. The leader laughed. We've tracked you for months. Beast. Followed every legend. Bribed every village elder. Studied every text on dragon curses. Do you really think we'd turn back now? Your heart alone is worth a king's ransom. Enough to set us up for 10 lifetimes. My heart is not for sale. Everything's for sale, one of the women said, her voice cold and professional. She carried a crossbow, its bolts tipped with that green-tinged poison. We just need to harvest it from your corpse first. They spread out with practiced efficiency, flanking Aurelius from multiple angles. Miren pressed herself against the wall, behind the dragon, her mind racing. 6 trained hunters against 1 cursed dragon. The odds weren't good, especially if their weapons were specifically designed to pierce dragon scales. Aurelius's tail swept across the floor, scattering gold and creating a barrier between the hunters and himself. I'm giving you one final chance. Walk away. Find your fortunes elsewhere. I have no wish to kill you. How noble, the leader sneered. But we're not here for your mercy, beast. We're here for your... He never finished the sentence. Aurelius struck with speed that belied his massive size, his head snaking forward faster than a viper. Jaws that could crush stone snapped shut inches from the leader's face. A warning strike, not a killing blow. The man stumbled backward with a shout of alarm. The hunters reacted instantly. Crossbow bolts flew, spears thrust forward, and the air filled with the clash of dragon's bane against golden scales. Aurelius roared, not words, but pure sound that shook the cavern so violently that stalactites broke free from the ceiling and crashed down like stone spears. His wings swept out, creating a wind that sent two hunters tumbling across the treasure-strewn floor. His tail whipped around, forcing another to dive for cover. But they were good, terrifyingly good. Where one fainted, another struck true. A spear found the gap between scales on Aurelius's foreleg, drawing golden blood that steamed when it hit the air. He snarled in pain and rage, twisting to snap at his attacker, but that left him open for another strike. This one a crossbow bolt that lodged between his shoulder blades. The dragon's bane was working. Miren could see it in the way Aurelius's movements became slightly slower, less precise. The poison was sapping his strength, making each motion more labored. Terror clawed at Miren's throat. He was losing. Her eyes swept the chamber desperately, looking for anything that could help. Her gaze landed on one of the massive crystal formations that jutted from the cavern wall. Support structures that had stood for millennia, holding up the ceiling. It was insane, reckless, potentially fatal. Miren ran. She grabbed a discarded spear from where a hunter had dropped it. Not dragon's bane, thankfully, just regular steel. Using it as a lever, she wedged it into the crystal's base and pushed with all her strength. "What are you doing, girl?" one of the hunters shouted, noticing her for the first time. The crystal cracked. Fissures spread like lightning through its structure. "Aurelius," Miren screamed. "Move left! Now!" The dragon reacted on pure instinct, trusting her completely. His massive body shifted just as Miren threw her entire weight against the spear. The crystal shattered. The section of ceiling it had been supporting came down in an avalanche of stone and mineral, tons of rock crashing exactly where three of the hunters had been standing. They screamed, brief, cut-off sounds, before the debris buried them. Silence fell, broken only by settling dust and Miren's ragged breathing. The three surviving hunters stared at the rubble, at their buried companions, then at Miren with expressions of shocked fury. "You killed them," the leader breathed, his voice shaking with rage. "You murdered. They were trying to murder him." Miren shot back, her fear transforming into anger. "What did you expect? That we'd just let you butcher him for profit?" The leader's face twisted. He raised his sword, dragon's bane gleaming poison green, and started toward Miren with murder in his eyes. Aurelius's roar shook the foundations of the mountain. Fire erupted from his jaws, golden, blazing, furious. It wasn't the gentle, healing flame he'd shown Miren before. This was dragonfire unleashed in protective rage, a wall of searing heat that forced the hunters to throw themselves backward or be consumed. When the flames cleared, Aurelius stood between Miren and the hunters, every inch of him radiating deadly intent. "You threaten her!" he snarled, his voice dropping to something primordial and terrifying. "And you die. That is not a warning. That is a promise written in fire and blood." The remaining hunters exchanged glances. Their leader's hands shook on his sword hilt. The woman with the crossbow had lost her weapon in the chaos. And the third hunter, a younger man who looked barely past 20, had gone pale beneath his armor. "This isn't over," the leader spat. "We'll return with more hunters, better weapons. You can't hide in this mountain forever, beast. Perhaps not, Aurelius agreed, his voice still resonant with barely leashed violence. But I can make certain you don't live to hire them. He inhaled, chest expanding, fire building in his throat. Wait. The young hunter threw down his weapon, hands raised. Wait, please. Just let us go. We'll leave. We'll tell no one. Please. The leader turned on him. Coward. We can still die. The young man interrupted, his voice cracking. Look around, Marcus. Half our team is buried. The dragon has a human ally who just brought down the ceiling. We're outmatched, and you know it. For a long moment, tension held the chamber in suspended animation. Then the crossbow woman lowered her weapon. The boy's right, she said quietly. This hunt is over. We need to leave before we join the others under that rubble. The leader's jaw worked furiously, but eventually he lowered his sword. This isn't mercy, he growled at Aurelius. This is tactical retreat. We'll be back. And I'll be waiting, Aurelius promised darkly. But next time, I won't hold back. Next time, none of you leave alive. The hunters retreated slowly, never turning their backs until they'd reached the passage entrance. The young one paused at the threshold. I'm sorry, he said, looking at Aurelius with something like awe mixed with shame. The stories made you sound like a monster. But you're not, are you? You're just trying to survive. Aurelius's expression softened fractionally. We all are. Remember that. Next time someone offers you gold to kill a legend. Then they were gone, their footsteps echoing away through the mountain passages. The moment they disappeared, Aurelius's legs gave out. He collapsed with a sound like falling mountains, his massive form crashing into the treasure piles. The crossbow bolts and spear wounds bled golden ichor that pooled on stone, and Miren could see the poison spreading, dark veins creeping beneath his scales like corruption. Aurelius! She ran to him, her hands finding his scales, feeling the heat fading from his body. I'm all right, he managed, but his voice was weak, thready. Dragon's bane. Slows healing, but won't kill me. Just need time. How much time? Miren demanded, fear making her voice sharp. Days. Maybe a week. The poison has to work its way out. His eyes, usually blazing gold, had dimmed to barely glowing embers. Miren, you need to leave. While I'm weak. If more hunters come, absolutely not. She began examining his wounds, her mind working frantically. You said golden dragon fire could heal. Can you use it on yourself? Not effectively. Dragon magic works better on others than self. He coughed, smoke and blood mixing. Please, you have to. Go. Can't protect you like this. Then I'll protect you, Miren said fiercely. You saved my life when I fell. You healed me, sheltered me, showed me wonders I never imagined. You think I'm abandoning you now, when you need help? Stubborn, cartographer, damn right. She stripped off her outer shirt, using it to create pressure bandages for the worst wounds. Now tell me what you need. What helps Dragon's Bane poisoning? There must be something in all those books you've collected. Aurelius's laugh was weak but genuine. Library, far corner, blue binding, draconic medicine, volume 3. Miren sprinted to the library chamber, her heart hammering. She found the book exactly where he'd indicated, ancient, leather-bound, filled with diagrams and text in languages she mostly couldn't read. But the illustrations were clear enough. Dragons being treated for poison, herbs and minerals being ground into pastes. She brought it back to Aurelius, flipping through pages frantically. This one. It shows a paste made from... I can't read the name. What does this symbol mean? Aurelius squinted at the page with fading vision. Moonstone dust. mixed with mountain spring water, and my own blood, creates. Counteragent. Where's the moonstone? Crystal chamber. East passage. Take the luminous crystals. Grind them to powder. Miren ran again, her lungs burning, terror giving her speed. She found the chamber, grabbed crystals that glowed with pale light, and raced back. Using a mortar and pestle from Aurelius's workshop area, she ground the crystals to fine powder, mixed it with water from his drinking supply, and carefully collected drops of golden blood from his wounds. The paste she created glowed faintly, pulsing with soft light. On the wounds, Aurelius whispered, "Pack it into the punctures." Miren worked with steady hands despite her shaking heart, applying the paste to each crossbow bolt hole, each spear cut. Where it touched Dragon's bane poison, the paste hissed and sparked, drawing the corruption out in dark wisps of smoke. It took hours. Miren lost track of time, focused entirely on her task, on keeping Aurelius alive. She talked to him constantly, forcing him to stay conscious, to keep breathing, to hold on. "You're not allowed to die," she told him as she packed paste into the wound between his shoulder blades. "Not after everything. Not after I just figured out that I'm falling in love with you. You stubborn, noble, magnificent creature." Aurelius's eyes flickered with surprise despite his weakness. "You... what?" "You heard me." Miren's hands trembled as she worked. "I'm in love with a dragon. With you. It's insane and impossible and completely illogical. But there it is. So you have to live, Aurelius. You have to survive this. Because I'm not done learning everything about you. I'm not done with our time together. And I refuse to lose you to poisoned weapons wielded by greedy fools." A tear splashed onto golden scales. Then another. Miren hadn't even realized she was crying. Aurelius made a sound. Half laugh, half sob. Worst possible timing for a love confession. "When else was I supposed to tell you? After you died." Miren finished with the last wound and sat back, exhausted. "No. You needed to know. You needed to understand that you matter, that you're loved, that someone in this world would fight for you." The dragon's massive head shifted, bringing his eyes level with hers despite his obvious pain. "I love you too," he whispered, the words barely audible. "From the moment you called me beautiful instead of monstrous. From the first time you touched my scales without fear. I love you, Miren Ashford, and that is both my greatest joy and my deepest curse." "Why curse?" Miren asked, though she thought she knew. "Because I'm bound to this mountain. Because loving you means eventually losing you. Because there's no future for a mortal and a prisoner." His eyes closed. "Because this love can only end in heartbreak." Miren took his massive head in her arms as best she could, pressing her forehead against his scales. "Then we'll face heartbreak together," she whispered. "But not today. Today, you survive. Today, you heal. And tomorrow we start looking for the answer neither of us has found yet. The way to break this curse without sacrificing everything." Aurelius's breathing steadied, the paste working to neutralize the poison. His scales regained a hint of their warmth. Slowly, painfully, he was stabilizing. "Stay," he murmured, half asleep already as his body focused on healing. "Please stay." "I'm not going anywhere," Miren promised. "Not while you need me. Maybe not ever." She sat beside him through the night, her hand resting on his scales, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her palm. The mountain was silent around them, the threat temporarily past. But as Miren watched over the dragon she'd come to love, she knew the hunters. Words had been true. This wasn't over. More would come eventually, drawn by legends and greed, unless she found another way. Unless the impossible could somehow become possible. Miren's eyes drifted to the ancient texts scattered around the library, to the knowledge Aurelius had accumulated across 1,000 years of imprisonment. Somewhere in all that collected wisdom, there had to be an answer. A loophole. A solution that didn't require one of them to sacrifice everything. She just had to find it. Before time ran out for both of them. 3 days passed before Aurelius could maintain his human form for more than a few minutes. Miren spent every waking hour either tending to his wounds or buried in his library, searching through ancient texts for anything that might offer a way to break the curse without the terrible price it demanded. She read until her eyes burned, translated symbols with Aurelius's weak guidance, cross-referenced every mention of binding magic and dragon curses she could find. The answer remained maddeningly out of reach. On the 4th day, Aurelius woke fully lucid for the first time since the attack. Miren was at his side immediately, checking his wounds, relieved to see the golden glow returning to his scales. The poison's nearly cleared, she reported, unable to keep the exhaustion from her voice. Another day or two, and you should be back to full strength. Thanks to you. Aurelius transformed slowly to his human form, wincing at the effort but managing it more smoothly than before. When he was fully changed, he pulled Miren into his arms, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. You saved my life. You saved mine first, Miren reminded him, leaning into his warmth. We're even. We'll never be even. He kissed the top of her head. You didn't have to stay. You could have run when the hunters came, saved yourself. Instead, you brought down a ceiling and then nursed a wounded dragon for days. That's not evening a debt. Miren, that's... His voice caught. That's love. Miren pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Yes, it is. They stood like that for a long moment, the weight of that confession settling between them, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. I've been reading the curse texts, Miren said finally, breaking the silence. The original binding. There has to be something we're missing, some detail that... There isn't. Aurelius's voice was gentle but firm. Trust me. I've had 1,000 years to examine every word, every clause, every possible interpretation. The magic is absolute. A mortal must willingly choose to take my place. To become the mountain's eternal prisoner. That's the only way I leave. What about the ritual I found? Miren pressed. The one that could merge our lifespans, make you partly mortal and me partly dragon. Aurelius had gone still when she'd shown him that particular text 2 days ago. Now he shook his head slowly. It's theoretical, Miren. Written by a dragon mage who died before ever testing it. The risks. He cupped her face in his hands. The ritual requires both participants to stand in dragon fire during a lunar eclipse, mixing blood and magic while speaking binding words in the old tongue. If anything goes wrong, if the proportions are off, if the words are mispronounced, if our bodies reject the transformation, we both die, instantly, painfully. But if it works, I lose my immortality. I become mortal enough to die within a human lifetime. And you. His expression was anguished. You'd gain centuries of life, yes, but you'd be changed. Neither fully human nor fully dragon. The text warns of madness, of bodies rejecting the dual nature, of becoming something the world has never seen and might fear or hunt. So we'd be together, Miren said stubbornly. Changed, maybe, different, but together. For how long? Aurelius countered. A human lifetime is nothing, Miren. 60 years if we're lucky, maybe 80. After 1,000 years of waiting, to have so little time with you, his voice broke, and to condemn you to centuries afterward, watching everyone you know die while you remain, just as I have. I can't do that to you. I won't. That's my choice to make. Is it? Aurelius pulled away, pacing the chamber with agitated energy. Can you really consent to something when you have no frame of reference for what you're agreeing to? You're 26 years old. You've never watched a loved one age and die while you stayed young. You've never felt the isolation of outliving everyone around you. You don't know what you'd be signing up for. Miren stood, meeting his pacing with her own rising frustration. And you don't know what I can handle. I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting from hard choices. I've spent 3 years mapping territories that killed stronger travelers than me. I've survived storms and falls and starvation. I'm not afraid of difficulty, Aurelius. I'm afraid of walking away from you and spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been possible if I'd just been brave enough to try. Brave. He laughed bitterly. This isn't bravery. It's love, Miren shouted, her voice echoing through the cavern. It's choosing to fight for something instead of accepting defeat before we've even tried. You've spent 1,000 years waiting for someone to free you, and now that there might be a way that doesn't require me to trade places with you, a way where we both walk out of this mountain, you're too afraid to attempt it. Aurelius flinched, as if she'd struck him. Of course I'm afraid, I'm terrified, because this isn't just about me anymore. For 1,000 years, the only life at stake was my own. I could endure anything knowing I was the only one suffering. But you. His eyes blazed with desperate intensity. If that ritual fails and you die because I was selfish enough to try it, because I wanted freedom badly enough to risk your life, that would destroy me, Miren. That would be a torture worse than another millennium in this cage. The fight drained out of Miren as suddenly as it had risen. She closed the distance between them, taking his hands in hers. I know you're scared, she said softly. I'm scared too. But Aurelius, listen to me. Really listen. I've already made my choice. The moment I decided not to leave after my leg healed, the moment I kissed you, the moment I told you I loved you, I was choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing to find a way forward together, whatever that looks like. Even if it kills you. Even then. She squeezed his hands. Because the alternative, leaving you here, going back to my maps and my safe, predictable life, always wondering if we could have broken this curse together, that's not living, Aurelius. That's just existing. And I didn't spend 3 years charting unknown territories to settle for merely existing. Aurelius searched her face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Finding none, he pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. When is the next lunar eclipse? He asked, his voice muffled. Miren's heart leaped. You'll try it. The ritual. I'll try anything that gives us a chance. He pulled back, his expression serious. But we do this my way. We spend the next week studying every detail of that text. We practice the pronunciation of every word in the old tongue until you can speak it in your sleep. We gather every ingredient, create backups, plan for every contingency. And if there's any moment where I think the risks are too great, we stop. Agreed. Agreed, Miren said immediately. When's the eclipse? Aurelius closed his eyes, calculating with the astronomical knowledge he'd accumulated. 3 weeks. The lunar eclipse falls in exactly 21 days, visible from these peaks just after midnight. 3 weeks, 21 days to prepare for a ritual that could free them both or kill them both. Miren felt simultaneously exhilarated and terrified. Then we'd better start studying, she said. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of intense preparation. Aurelius and Miren spent every day poring over the ritual text, dissecting every symbol, every instruction, every warning. The old tongue, the language dragons had spoken before humans developed writing, was complex and guttural, each word carrying multiple meanings that shifted based on context and intonation. Like this, Aurelius demonstrated, speaking a phrase that sounded like grinding stone mixed with wind through canyons. The word for bind and the word for break differ by only the slightest change in pitch. get it wrong, and we could reinforce the curse instead of breaking it. Miren practiced until her throat was raw, until she could hear the difference between the subtle variations, until she could speak the binding words without hesitation. They gathered ingredients listed in the ritual: moonstone dust, already collected; dragon's blood. Aurelius provided that, though each donation left him slightly weakened; mountain spring water from the highest peak, which required Miren to make a dangerous climb through passages still damaged from the avalanche; starlight captured in crystal during the new moon; herbs that grew only in the spaces between stone and sky. Each ingredient had to be prepared in specific ways, stored in particular vessels, combined in precise proportions. The margin for error is microscopic, Aurelius warned, as they mixed their 5th test batch, this one creating a paste that glowed with soft silver light. Too much dragon's blood, and the transformation could overwhelm your human body. Too little, and my immortality might not transfer properly, leaving us both mortal but killing me in the process. No pressure then, Miren muttered, but her hands were steady as she measured. They also talked. Long conversations about what would come after, if the ritual succeeded. "I'll be mortal," Aurelius said one evening as they sat among the treasure piles, the golden glow making everything feel dreamlike. "Truly mortal for the first time in my existence. I'll age. Eventually, I'll die." "We'll age together," Miren corrected. "And yes, eventually we'll both die. But isn't that what makes life precious? The fact that it ends." "You say that as someone who's never faced immortality." But he was smiling slightly. "Though I suppose after 1,000 years, the idea of a natural ending has a certain appeal. No more watching the world change while I remain frozen. No more outliving everything I care about. And I'll have centuries," Miren continued, working through her own side of the transformation. "Enough time to map every corner of the world if I wanted. Enough time to learn every language, explore every mystery." She leaned against him. "Enough time with you to make up for all the years you spent alone." Aurelius pressed a kiss to her temple. "You make it sound almost possible. It is possible. We'll make it possible." But as the eclipse approached, doubts crept in during the quiet moments. One night, Miren woke from a nightmare where the ritual had failed, where she'd watched Aurelius dissolve into ash and fire while she screamed his name. She found him in his dragon form, unable to sleep, his golden eyes reflecting starlight from the cavern's high openings. Having second thoughts, he asked gently, somehow sensing her turmoil. "Yes," she admitted, "but I'm not changing my mind. Are you? Every 5 minutes." His rumbling laugh held no humor. "But like you said, I'm not changing my mind either." They spent that night curled together, dragon and human, drawing comfort from each other's presence as the weight of their choice pressed down. 3 days before the eclipse, Miren's supplies finally ran out. She'd been rationing the food she'd brought, supplemented by what Aurelius could create or preserve with dragon magic. But eventually even that dwindled to nothing. Her body felt weak, her hands slightly shaky. "You need real food," Aurelius said, frowning at her pale complexion. "Food I can't provide here. The village is 3 days, travel round trip, assuming good weather," Miren finished. "I'd never make it back in time for the eclipse." They stared at each other as the implication sank in. "We postpone," Aurelius said immediately. "Wait for the next eclipse. You go to the village, resupply, come back." "The next eclipse isn't for another year," Miren countered. She'd checked the astronomical charts herself. "Can you really wait another full year? Can I? If it means you're healthy enough to survive the ritual, I'm fine." Miren stood, forcing strength into her posture despite the lightheadedness. "A few days without food won't kill me. People fast for religious reasons all the time. I'll manage." "Miren," We're not postponing, Aurelius. Not when we're this close. Not when everything is prepared. She took his hands. I'll be fine. I promise. He looked unconvinced but eventually nodded. Then I fast with you. Whatever weakness you face, we face together. You need your strength for the ritual. Together, he repeated firmly. That's how we do this. No more arguing. So they fasted together, 3 days of hunger and weakness and stubborn determination. Miren used the time to review the ritual words obsessively, speaking them in whisper even in her sleep. Aurelius checked and rechecked their preparations, arranging ingredients with meticulous care. The night before the eclipse, neither of them slept. They sat in the highest chamber of the mountain, where Aurelius had carved openings in the stone ceiling to allow moonlight to enter. Through those openings, they could see stars wheeling overhead, beautiful and distant and uncaring. Last chance to change your mind, Aurelius said quietly. Not a chance. Miren laced her fingers through his. I stopped having second thoughts somewhere around the 1,000th time you made me laugh. He turned to face her fully. Miren Ashford, I want you to know, whatever happens tomorrow, these past weeks with you have been the most precious of my entire existence. 1,000 years of waiting was worth it to find you. Tears pricked Miren's eyes. Don't talk like we're saying goodbye. Talk like we're saying hello to whatever comes next. Hello then, he whispered, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Hello to tomorrow. Hello to hope. Hello to whatever we're about to become. They made love that night, slow and desperate and achingly gentle, memorizing every touch in case it was their last. When it was over, they held each other as the stars turned overhead, marking the passage of time toward an eclipse that would change everything. I love you, Miren whispered into the darkness. I love you, Aurelius echoed. More than flight, more than freedom, more than anything I've ever known. The moon began to rise, full and bright, climbing toward its appointment with Earth's shadow. Tomorrow, they would stand in dragonfire and speak words of transformation. Tomorrow, they would risk everything for a chance at forever. Tomorrow, they would either break the curse together or die trying. But tonight, they simply held each other and watched the stars, two souls bound by love and impossible choices, waiting for the dawn that would seal their fate. The eclipse began at midnight. Miren stood at the mountain's highest peak, where Aurelius had carved a circle into the ancient stone, dragon symbols etched deep, filled with crushed moonstone that glowed silver in the darkness. Around the circle, they'd placed the ritual ingredients in precise positions: vials of mixed blood, captured starlight pulsing in crystal vessels, herbs bundled with threads of gold. The air was thin and cold at this altitude. Miren's breath misted before her face, and despite the heavy cloak Aurelius had fashioned from preserved furs, she shivered. Not from cold, from anticipation and fear so profound it felt like standing at the edge of existence itself. Aurelius stood across from her, still in human form, wearing only simple trousers. His bare chest was marked with symbols he'd painted in a mixture of ash and dragon's blood, runes of transformation, breaking and binding reversed. His golden eyes reflected the rising moon, bright with determination and barely suppressed terror. The shadow begins, he said quietly, pointing skyward. Miren looked up. The full moon hung huge and luminous, but at its edge, darkness was creeping across the silver surface, Earth's shadow, beginning its slow consumption of lunar light. We have until the moon is fully eclipsed, Aurelius continued, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. The ritual must be completed within that window, approximately 1 hour. Once totality begins, we speak the words, and I release the dragon fire. After that, he paused. After that, we trust in magic older than kingdoms, and hope we've done everything right. We have. Miren stepped into the circle, feeling the moonstone glow warm beneath her bare feet. She'd removed her boots and most of her clothing, wearing only a simple shift that wouldn't interfere with the transformation. We've checked everything 100 times. We're ready. I wish I had your confidence. You do. You're just too terrified to feel it right now. She reached across the circle, and he took her hand. Breathe, Aurelius. We can do this. He squeezed her fingers gently. If this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does... He pulled her closer, until they stood in the center of the circle together. I need you to know that I don't regret any of it. Not bringing you here, not healing you, not falling in love with you. Even if we fail, even if this kills us both, I'd make the same choices again. Miren rose on her toes and kissed him, tasting salt and fear and desperate hope on his lips. We're not failing, she whispered against his mouth. Now transform. The shadows spreading. Aurelius stepped back to the circle's edge. His eyes closed, and for a moment he was perfectly still. A man shaped from gold and ancient magic, beautiful in his vulnerability. Then he let go. The transformation rippled through him like water disturbed by wind. His human form expanded, unfolded, grew into something massive and magnificent. Golden scales erupted across his skin, catching moonlight and eclipse shadow both. Wings spread wide, their membranes translucent against the stars. His neck elongated, his face reshaping into the powerful skull of a dragon, horns curving back like a crown. Within seconds, Aurelius stood before her in his true form, golden dragon towering against the night sky. Wings spread to frame the eclipsing moon, every inch of him radiating power and ancient magic. But Miren could see the fear in those burning eyes, could see the way his massive body trembled slightly. He was just as terrified as she was, just hiding it behind scales and sighs. I'm here, she called up to him. We do this together, just like everything else. The dragon's head lowered until his eyes were level with hers. When he spoke, his voice was thunder shaped into tenderness. Together. The moon continued its slide into shadow. Halfway now, its lower half consumed by darkness while the upper half still gleamed silver. Begin the preparation, Aurelius instructed. Pour the blood mixture first. Miren's hands shook as she lifted the largest vial. Their combined blood, dragon gold and human red, swirled together into something that looked like liquid sunset. She poured it in a continuous stream around the circle's inner edge, following the channel carved in stone. Where the blood touched moonstone, it ignited with pale fire that neither burned nor faded. The starlight crystals. Placed them at the cardinal points. She positioned the 4 crystals carefully. North, south, east, west. Each one began to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, as if recognizing her life force. The herbs, burn them in the center. Miren arranged the bundled plants in a small pile and touched them with a lit coal she'd carried up the mountain. They caught immediately, producing sweet smoke that smelled of mountain meadows and something indefinable. Magic, perhaps, or possibility. The moon was 3/4 shadowed now. The world had dimmed to twilight despite the midnight hour, everything painted in shades of silver and ash. Stand in the center, Aurelius commanded, his voice growing stronger. When totality comes, I'll breathe the dragon fire. It will surround you completely. Don't fight it. Don't fear it. Let it in. Let it transform you. Miren positioned herself in the exact center of the circle, standing in the smoke of burning herbs. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. And you? She asked. What happens to you? I speak the words of breaking while the fire surrounds you. My immortality will flow out through the flames, seeking your mortal form. As it leaves me, I'll become vulnerable to time, to age, to death. His eyes held hers. And you'll become something neither of us can fully predict. The texts say you might gain dragon abilities, fire resistance, extended senses, perhaps even wings in time. Or you might simply live longer, with dragon magic burning in your blood. We won't know until the transformation completes. And if our bodies reject the change, then we die. Simple, honest, terrifying. The transformation will tear us apart from the inside. It will be quick, at least. The moon slipped into full shadow. Totality. The world went dark except for the burning herbs, the glowing blood circle, and the pulsing starlight crystals. Above them, the eclipsed moon hung like a copper coin, faintly red from Earth's refracted light. Now, Aurelius said. He inhaled, deep and endless, his chest expanding like a bellows. Miren could see fire building in his throat, golden light glowing brighter and brighter behind his teeth. Then he breathed. Dragon fire poured over Miren in a wave of liquid gold. It surrounded her completely, a column of flame that reached from stone to sky, and she was at its center, burning, 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 but not in pain. The fire was warm like summer sun, like being wrapped in light itself. It poured into her mouth, her nose, her eyes, seeping through her skin and finding her blood, her bones, her very essence. She could feel it rewriting her from the inside out, each cell accepting transformation or dying in the attempt. Through the flames, she heard Aurelius speaking, words in the old tongue that resonated in her chest, in her soul. Curthax velenor, draconis immortai, fluth corvan mortalis. The words for breaking immortality, for trading eternal life for mortal time. Miren tried to speak her part of the ritual, but fire filled her mouth. She forced the words out anyway, her voice cracking with effort. Mortalis velenor, humanis fluth, draconis corvan ascendis. Trading human fragility for dragon strength. Accepting transformation, becoming something between. The fire intensified. Miren felt her body changing, bones lengthening slightly, muscles restructuring, her very blood heating to temperatures that should have killed her, but instead felt like coming home to a warmth she'd never known she was missing. Pain came then, sudden and absolute. Her spine arched, every nerve ending screaming as dragon magic tried to reshape human flesh too quickly. She heard Aurelius roar in agony across the circle as his immortality burned away, centuries of invulnerability dissolving like morning mist. They were dying. The transformation was too much, too fast, too violent. No. Miren reached through the pain, through the fire, and found Aurelius's presence somehow. Not with her hands, but with something deeper. Their minds touched across the flames, dragon and human consciousness intertwining. Together, she thought desperately. We do this together. Aurelius's mind wrapped around hers like wings folding around precious cargo. Their transformations synchronized, each change in her body matching a change in his, their essences blending and balancing in the crucible of dragon fire. The pain didn't stop, but it became bearable. Shared weight is lighter weight. Miren felt scales trying to form on her skin, her human body rejecting them initially, then accepting small patches along her shoulders and spine. She felt her eyes changing, gaining dragon sight that let her see heat and magic as colors in the darkness. Her senses expanded dramatically. She could smell the mountain's mineral heart, hear Aurelius's frantically beating heart across the circle, taste magic on the air like honey and copper. And Aurelius, she felt his immortality burning away like fog in sunlight, felt him becoming fragile and finite and beautifully, terribly mortal. His dragon form began to shift, becoming slightly smaller, his scales losing some of their invulnerability. He was still massive, still magnificent, but now he could be wounded, could bleed, could die, could age alongside her. The ritual reached its crescendo. The dragon fire blazed white-hot. The moonstone circle erupted with light. And for one infinite moment, Miren and Aurelius existed between forms, neither human nor dragon, neither mortal nor immortal, but something entirely new. Then, the fire vanished. Miren collapsed to the stone, gasping, every muscle trembling, The world spun wildly, her new senses overwhelming her with information she didn't know how to process. She could see in colors that didn't have names, hear harmonics in the mountain's settling stone, feel the rotation of the earth beneath her. Across the circle, Aurelius had transformed back to human form, but different now. He looked younger somehow, more vital, but also more vulnerable. When he touched the stone to push himself upright, his hand left a smear of blood. He could be hurt now. He could bleed. "Miren," he croaked, his voice hoarse from screaming the ritual words. "Are you alive?" she managed, changed, but alive. She pushed herself to sitting and looked down at her arms. Patches of golden scales glimmered along her forearms, beautiful and strange. When she focused, they receded into her skin, leaving only smooth human flesh. When she relaxed, they emerged again, responsive to her will, or perhaps her emotion. "It worked," Aurelius breathed, wonder in his voice. By all the ancient gods, it actually worked. He crawled across the circle to her, and they collapsed into each other's arms, both shaking, both crying, both laughing hysterically. "Can you feel it?" Miren asked. "Your mortality?" "Yes." Aurelius pressed his hand to his chest. "My heart beats faster now. I can feel time passing in my bones, not freezing me anymore, but carrying me forward. I'll age, Miren. Slowly, perhaps, because I'm still part dragon. But I'll age. I'll eventually die. And I'll live centuries," Miren said, examining the scales on her arms. "Long enough to see things I never dreamed of. Long enough to outlive." Her voice caught. "Everyone I've ever known. Except me." Aurelius cupped her face gently. "We'll have the same lifespan now, dragon mortal, neither eternal nor brief. Perhaps 300 years, maybe 500. The texts weren't specific. 300 years, 500, an impossible gift of time." "That's enough," Miren whispered. "More than enough." Above them, the moon began emerging from Earth's shadow. Totality was ending, the eclipse releasing its grip on the world. "Can you stand?" Aurelius asked. Miren tried. Her legs wobbled but held. Together, they rose, supporting each other, and looked out from the mountain peak. Dawn was approaching, the horizon beginning to lighten with the promise of sun, and with it came a realization that stole Miren's breath. "The curse," she said. "Aurelius, try to leave the circle. Try to walk down the mountain." He looked at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. Carefully, as if approaching a trap, he stepped beyond the ritual circle, took another step, another. Nothing stopped him. The curse was broken. "I can leave," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I can actually leave." Tears streamed down his face, 1,000 years of imprisonment ending in a single moment of freedom. He turned to Miren, and she saw joy so pure it was almost painful to witness. "Where do you want to go?" she asked, laughing through her own tears. "The whole world is open to you now." Aurelius swept her into his arms, spinning her around with strength he could now afford to spend, mortality making every moment precious instead of endless. "Everywhere," he said. "I want to see everything. Feel rain on my skin, swim in oceans, stand in deserts and forests and cities. I want to fly through open sky without bars or boundaries." He set her down gently, his forehead resting against hers. "But mostly, I want to do it all with you. Even knowing I'm not fully human anymore." Miren touched the scales on her arm. "That people might fear what I've become. Especially knowing that." Aurelius kissed her gently. "You're not fully human, and I'm not fully dragon. We're something new. Something the world has never seen. We'll figure out what that means together." The sun broke over the horizon, sending golden light spilling across the mountain peaks. Aurelius turned toward it like a flower seeking warmth, his face transforming with wonder. "Sunrise," he breathed. "Unfiltered, unlimited sunrise. I haven't seen this in 947 years, 3 months, and approximately 23 days. Miren supplied." He laughed, free and unrestrained. "Who's counting?" They descended the mountain together, Aurelius stopping every few minutes to touch grass, pick up stones, examine flowers with the fascination of someone seeing the world newborn. Everything amazed him. Everything was precious. When they reached the treasure chambers, Aurelius gathered only what they'd need: some gold for travel expenses, a few precious books, the seeds he'd preserved for replanting. The rest he left behind. "Let it stay," he said, looking at the mountains of accumulated wealth. "Let future explorers find it, or let it sleep forever. I don't need it anymore. I have everything I want." They packed supplies, gathered Miren's cartography tools, and prepared for the journey ahead. "Where should we go first?" Aurelius asked as they stood at the mountain's base, the village of Grey Hollow visible in the distance. Miren pulled out her incomplete map, the masterwork that had brought her here in the first place. The Ashen Peaks were now filled in with meticulous detail, but beyond them, the world stretched vast and unmapped. "I need to finish my chart," she said. "Map the territories I missed. But after that," she smiled up at him, "after that, we chart new territory together. Places no one's mapped because no one's ever been there. The kind of journeys only someone with dragon strength and centuries to explore could attempt. Dangerous territories," Aurelius observed. "The best kind." He transformed then, not to his massive true form, but to something smaller, more manageable. A dragon the size of a large horse, golden scales gleaming in morning light, wings spread wide enough to carry 2. "Your first flight," he said, lowering himself so she could climb onto his back. "If you're not ready." "I'm ready." Miren settled between his shoulders, her hands finding purchase on his scales that now felt familiar, like touching part of herself. "Show me what you've missed for 1,000 years." Aurelius's wings swept down with power that sent dust swirling. They lifted, unsteady at first, then smoother as he remembered instincts buried under centuries of imprisonment. Higher and higher they rose, until the mountain fell away below and the sky opened vast and endless above. Miren felt her scales emerge across her shoulders, responding to the altitude, to the wind, to the pure joy radiating from Aurelius. She laughed, wild and free, as they climbed toward clouds. Aurelius roared, not in anger or pain, but in triumph. The sound echoed across valleys and peaks, announcing to the world that the last golden dragon had finally broken free. They flew for hours, relearning freedom together. Aurelius showed Miren how to read wind currents, how to dive and soar, how to see the world from dragon height. She mapped it all in her mind, already planning the charts she'd create. The first maps drawn from Dragonback, showing perspectives no human cartographer had ever captured. As the sun climbed higher, they turned south, toward territories unknown. Behind them, the Ashen Peaks grew smaller, their prison-turned sanctuary fading into memory. Ahead lay everything: centuries of exploration, discovery, and love. Challenges would come, certainly. People who feared their transformation, hunters who still sought dragon hearts, the simple difficulty of existing between two worlds. But they would face it together, mortal and immortal no longer, but something beautifully in between. Miren leaned forward, pressing her cheek against Aurelius's scales, feeling his heart beating strong and mortal and alive beneath her. "Thank you," she whispered, knowing he'd hear her despite the wind. "For choosing me, for letting me choose you, for being brave enough to try." Aurelius's mental voice touched hers, that connection forged in dragonfire now permanent, letting them share thoughts as easily as words. "Thank you for falling into my life," little mapmaker, for seeing beauty instead of monster, for loving me enough to break an impossible curse. Where to now? Miren asked. Aurelius angled his wings, catching a thermal that lifted them higher into sky so blue it hurt to look at. Everywhere, he answered. Anywhere. As long as we fly together. And so they did. Dragon and human who was more than human. Flying into a future neither of them could map, but both were brave enough to explore. The curse was broken. The impossible was achieved. And their story, the tale of a cartographer who loved a dragon enough to transform the very nature of both their existences, was just beginning. Years later, in libraries across the Seven Kingdoms, scholars would debate the truth of the Ashen Peaks legend. Some claimed the golden dragon still slept in his mountain prison. Others insisted dragons had never existed at all, that the tales were metaphor and myth. But travelers who ventured into the world's remotest corners sometimes reported strange sightings. A woman with golden scales on her shoulders, who mapped territories no one else dared enter, always accompanied by a man whose eyes burned with ancient fire. They moved through the world like legends themselves, appearing in one region to replant extinct species, in another to stop wars before they started, always together, always moving, never staying long enough to be captured or questioned. And on clear nights, in places where civilization's light didn't reach, people swore they saw a golden dragon flying against the stars, smaller than the old stories claimed, but no less magnificent. And riding on its back, they said, was a woman who laughed like freedom itself. The mapmaker and the dragon, the impossible love that rewrote the rules of magic and mortality, a legend that chose to live rather than simply exist. Together, they charted territories beyond any map, the landscape of transformation, sacrifice, and love that transcends all boundaries. And in doing so, they proved that sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't places on charts, but the courage to become something entirely new for the sake of someone worth changing for. Their journey continues still, in the spaces between what is and what might be, writing their own mythology one flight at a time. What would you have chosen, eternal life alone, or centuries together with the person you love, knowing even that would end? Tell me in the comments below. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Mythical Hearts for more tales of impossible love between humans and legendary creatures. Every week, we bring you epic romances that transcend the boundaries between worlds, proving that love is the most powerful magic of all. Don't forget to hit that like button. It helps us reach more hearts yearning for stories that dare to imagine love beyond all limits. Until our next tale, may you find the courage to transform for those you love. Thank you for listening.